Brains are capable of incredible growth, and they go through peaks and troughs where the brain's growing rapidly or where it's pruning a lot of neurologic connections, and somehow in the process of shearing down neurologic connections, the brain's getting smarter and stronger. It goes through moods, ups and downs. It's such a dynamic organ. We've got all kinds of ways that we're going to be talking about how we nurture our brains, how we create environments where our brains thrive, or in some cases, environments where our brains struggle. There's a lot that contributes to that. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back as we get into how to nurture your brain. And we're live. All right. We're live, Norty, for another week. Man, summer is kind of rapidly approaching. I feel like spring came really early, at least in our part of the country. And we thought we had this long spring to kind of, just get going. And, we've been hustling. I've been, working part-time over on a farm where they grow trees, and we're constantly working over there trying to keep up with the growing season. And
I can tell how much you've been working on your yard and trees when you said pruning and shearing in the intro.
True.
I was like, somebody's got grass on the brain,
That's a very common analogy. So I would say probably not something due to my mental priming, but
I disagree.
I think it's the best analogy though, right? And just diving right into some technical neuroscience, a significant part of neural development is not just brain growth, but really is the pruning and shearing of growth. So you go through a lot of brain growth during your child years, and the adolescent years are actually very heavily, a lot of the brain development, neurologic development in the adolescent years is actually really your brain almost severing and refining all the neurologic connections it's built up as a child, and really trying to mature and make neural circuits more efficient too.
And that's something I definitely wanted to at least touch on today, right? Is how does the brain develop? Right, you hear that term development, but what exactly is happening? And I think you started to get into that, and also what years the important stuff takes place. I know that's a bad way to put it, but what years the important stuff takes place, and then also, can you continue to push brain development even when you're past those developmental years per se? I think those are good things to understand as we get into this conversation and figure out ways to utilize our brain more so it doesn't stop developing, if that's possible.
Sure. Yeah, I think those are great topics for tonight's discussion. I hope they're of interest to people out in the audience.
Because what they say is if you don't use it, you lose it. I think that is very true with your brain.
I do agree with that. Yeah, I think there is a lot of truth to that. And I think you don't even need to be a scientist. Look around. I mean,
I say that in jest, but I feel like this is true. Like if you're not stimulating your brain and continue to look for ways to be active and learn, like I don't want to say you're going to lose the ability to have a brain. Like that's not the case, but it's like a muscle, right? If you're not flexing it, if you're not working it out, like, are you going to continue to push yourself and keep developing and get wiser as time goes on?
Well, wiser, I don't know. I mean, that's what is wisdom versus intelligence are very different things, right? I think wisdom it's almost like a foresight that I think comes from experience in many ways, right?
But that could be looked at as a form of intelligence, right? Like you've seen enough stuff to know what's what in some instances, right? Like your schoolings and learnings is you witnessing things and taking things in, but like I would consider that intelligence over just pure wisdom.
Yeah, although I would say I think there's like a spectrum of how well people demonstrate wisdom. right? I don't think it's just purely an experience, or like I think there's highly intelligent people that may have a lot of experience but lack wisdom, if that makes sense. Like their ability to apply their intelligence and experience. Maybe wisdom is more the application of experience.
Okay, I've never really thought of it that way. That's an interesting way to look at it. It's like you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't apply it, what good is it?
Yeah. And I think, if we just boil it down to medicine, right? I think there's definitely people out there, tons of experience, very intelligent, and maybe they just continue to do things like almost just how they've always done it because it works, and they've never actually stopped to ask themselves, like, is there a better way to do this? Is this the best way to do it? It's just a way that works. I think wisdom is the ability to say, like, I've over, all this experience, even though it works, X, Y, and Z is a secondary problem that we need to address. And I think there's people that are capable of sort of piecing together complexity, like the complexities of a situation with less experience too. And there is a degree of wisdom. Like I do think there is I don't know how we got down this path of wisdom, discussing wisdom, but
Who knows how we get down any path that we get down? But here we are.
Like, wisdom is not. It's extremely variable. That's really, I think, what I'm trying to get at. It's really variable, and it's hard to predict who possesses wisdom and who doesn't. I think you can have people with significantly less experience that are capable of demonstrating significantly greater amounts of wisdom relative to people with more experience. And then you obviously have your prototypical, person that has tons of experience and tons of wisdom. I mean, that's obviously probably where you see it the most. But I think there's definitely people that, they just, doesn't matter how much experience they have. They really lack wisdom.
So I know we got down this rabbit hole. I like that. I like that idea of it, but let's talk about how people develop their brain to get that wisdom or intelligence or a little bit of both.
Well, I think there's a lot of introspection that's necessary for, developing wisdom, right? Nurturing your brain.
Let's start in like the formative years, right? Like from birth, like what goes into brain developing? You mentioned shearing and pruning through those developmental stages. So let's work our way through those, and then let's get into how we nurture it on the tail end after our developmental years. So we can, yeah, go ahead.
I feel like hold on. Let's back up the train, because I feel like we dove right in.
We did dive
right in. We didn't even ask you how your week's been, how anything's been. So anyway,
we started with that. Where do you want to start?
That's our primer.
Yeah, that's what I want to cover once we get to the show. Right. But let's kick it back. Let's figure out how we're doing.
I feel like I was like
you were ready.
I got a cup of coffee. Yeah. I'm ready to just sort of, mosey in, pontificate, think about things, and you're like ready to go.
I think you started this. You started talking about the brain stuff, and then we just got down a rabbit hole of like topical stuff, and we skipped right over the chit-chatting, the pontificating.
Well, all right. Well, let's not completely derail here. All right.
We're gonna derail here.
Would you consider yourself like an inner monologuer type of person?
Yeah.
Do you think there's people who aren't?
I've heard of people that aren't.
Like, what is like other than the stereo or classic scene from Scrubs, where Dr. Wen is telling Turk that he's got to like relax when he's in surgery, and he's like, relax. He's like, I'm always thinking about the next step and blah blah blah. And he's like, what am I supposed to be thinking about? He's like, be more like the Todd. Todd's just standing there, like dum 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 shiny scalp, dum 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 dum, gonna cut you up.
I mean, and I think we may have touched on this. Like, I feel like I always have a million things running through my brain at all times, and I'm like constantly thinking about something. What's next? Like,
Are you like,
all of that.
do you bounce around in your thoughts, or do you
Oh,
feel like you kind of like take a thought and like you run with it, and you're just like kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
I can't keep a single train of thought. I will bounce
Not
around,
pontificate. You're, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for?
like fixated on it.
Fixated, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It's I don't know, whatever. Fixated on an idea.
Either
You
way,
get fixated on an idea, or are you kind of all over the place?
very rarely. I am all over the place. Like, I've got. We look at even the conversation we've had today. Like, I had a thought. I tried to get it out in a timely manner. Had to come back to it. We jumped around to like 3 other things. Like, that's what's going on in my brain at all times, and I feel bad for our chat when they have to listen to me do that, because it'll just come out. But that's what's going on inside my head tenfold, all the time. So
Do
yeah,
you enjoy a silent environment, or is it almost like your brain is too chaotic when it's silent that it's
it depends. Like, I do enjoy silence. Um, I don't like when I'm trying to think and something's like overly loud, almost like that'll
sure.
like, because that's all. Then I'll fixate on the sound and I'll just laser in on it, and I'm like, I can't do anything, and I can't even have a moment to myself to actually think. But I have heard of people that just don't have like internal monologue. I don't understand how that would happen.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm definitely an internal
Mhm.
monologuer in the sense that, I very much think in words, and I'm always, obviously, unless I'm like lasered in on a task, getting something done, I'm always kind of like the wheels are always turning, right?
Right.
But what types of things do you think about? Where does Norty's brain go on a daily basis if you're clearly not working on a specific problem or task, or
I guess
I guess I'm trying to get some insight, some third eye
I guess it just
vision into the environment of Norty's brain.
it just depends. I mean, if I'm working on something, obviously, like, I'm thinking about that. I'm probably also thinking about 100 other things, like what else I have to do during the day. What other tasks do I have coming up that I can't forget about? Am I paying attention to my email? Am I making sure I'm monitoring the things I'm supposed to be monitoring at work? What's going on in the video game world? When's football start? Is the NFL draft on? What am I supposed to do this weekend? What do I want to eat right now? What do I want to eat later? What did I have for breakfast this morning?
So
Just
very
typical, like, all over the place.
so, but like it seems like very much like the things going through your head are like the day to day, more
Yeah.
immediate, like reach out and touch type of things,
Yeah.
not
Every
just
once in a
like
while, it's like,
what is
you
the
know,
meaning of life or anything like that.
no, usually it's more like what's happening around me right now, or something that like recently happened. Maybe I'll be like, huh, why did that happen? Or, what could have gone differently? Those type of things.
Do you ever like replay social interactions with people where like maybe it just was awkward
So
or
I
whatever, and you like kind of try to
I had
like
to,
mirror what is might be going through that person's head, and then just totally psyching yourself out about what may or may not have actually happened?
So I'm glad you asked that, because I don't know when we talked about anxiety, but that used to be the source of all of my anxieties. I would replay every interaction that I had with people. I'm like, why did I do that? That was stupid. Like, why do I do dumb things? I could have done 100 different things better, and that was weird. And now they know I'm weird, and now everyone thinks I'm weird. And it's like, why did I do that? I used
Yeah,
to do that. I used to do
definitely
that
have
with.
thoughts like that for
I
sure.
used to do that every interaction. It was like, it would take away from me thinking about more meaningful things. And like,
Mm.
I had to stop. I had to train myself to stop doing that with every interaction with every human being I had. And I worked in retail sales. Like, this was very not good to think about. And I would think about that stuff
Well,
all
you
day,
had a
every
lot of
day.
opportunity for
Oh yeah.
another chance.
And you've met me. I say stupid stuff like all the time. Like, just whatever's on my brain sometimes just comes out, and like, it's not good. Um, and like, they probably didn't think twice, but I will think about it and I'll be like, why did I do that? Because realistically, if somebody did that to me, I would like never forget that person and be like, that dude was weird. Remember that guy? So, it's probably my own neurotic nature, but definitely have those thoughts.
Do you find that you like dwell on these things long term, or is it more short term and then once you're on to the next thing? Like,
oh, dude, it's gotten to the point where it's like I can move on very quickly now. It used to be long term, like things would linger for months, years. Like I would just think about them. Like it would just pop back in my brain. It's like, hey, buddy, like knock knock. Remember when you did that? Like that was stupid and it was weird.
I can honest, I've still got a few things from like years ago where it's like, oh my gosh. But it comes from this. I feel like it does come from this place of it's like, I'm not the same person I am now that I was 5-10 years ago.
Right.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, the person that said that 10 years ago, it's like, how stupid was he?
Like what were you thinking? Like that doesn't even like.
That's just, I mean, that is the environment of our brain, like evaluating its social interactions and thinking like, how am I going to change and mold myself into a different social entity?
Well, and personally, I think part of it too is I'm always trying to improve everything I do. Right? Like I want to get better at things. I enjoy learning. I enjoy improving at different crafts. And I think that's where a lot of that even comes to, because you try to apply it to like social interactions. Like, how could I have done that better so I feel less weird about it? Right? Like for me, I feel like that's where it comes from. I don't know if you feel the same way about it, because I feel like you're a motivated person. You like getting better at things. Like look at your yard, right? Like this is something you've taken up and I feel like you've gone all in on it and you want to get better at it over time. And I feel like when we're harping on those interactions and trying to think of what we could have done differently, it's coming from trying to improve. Because I personally, I always want to be improving. I don't want to be a worse person today than I was yesterday.
No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. And I think if it's a good reminder, right? When you meet someone and they do something super awkward, like, maybe just cut them a little slack.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like we're all weird, if somebody's normal, like I don't trust them. Right. I don't want normal people around me.
I don't think I've ever met anybody who's normal.
Yeah, probably not. But if I do, I will not trust them at all.
That's reasonable.
And so like that's like the fun part about how we're all kind of weird. Like you just embrace it, right? Like we're all weird in our own right. Don't focus on it. Embrace it when people are weird,
So I want to ask about I want to talk kind of more about how we
I lost my straw in my water bottle. So there we go. I just did something weird on stream that we'll probably think about for the rest of the night and not sleep at all. So if you're with me, chat.
One of the things I do want to talk about is kind of how we as humans modify our environment, change the environment of our brain in order to keep it developing, moving forward, and not getting stagnant. But before we do that, I want to take a quick pause and just thank our audience, thanks viewers for tuning in to the Red and Norty Show. Obviously, we love talking about all things brain and spine. We really want to support veterans who suffer from a lot of brain and spine injuries. And one of the ways we do that is with a nonprofit organization, Brain and Spine Group. That's what our live stream supports. That's why it's hosted on their channel. And the nonprofit organization provides support groups for veterans. It also provides one-on-one healthcare advocacy for veterans in order to help them navigate a complex landscape of healthcare for brain and spine injuries and illnesses. If you want to support that mission, you can scan the QR code in the top corner or head on over to our website, www.brainandspinegroup.org. Or you can click the join button on our YouTube community for $4.99 a month. Become a member of our YouTube community. For all of our educational content, it will always be available. We'll never paywall our educational content on YouTube. However, we are in the process of coming up with some educational, more fun, interesting, and engaging things that'll be available for exclusively for members. So if you want to get access to that stuff in the future, joining through the YouTube community is definitely the way to go. So you can do that by clicking join on the YouTube page, scan the QR code, or head on over to our website for other ways to support our nonprofit mission. But so with that, let's get back to back to the conversation. But before we get into modifying our environment, which I think I've heard and probably have mentioned on this stream before, is one of the things that really sets humans apart from really anything else in the animal kingdom, right? Is our ability to manipulate the environment, right? Most other animals, sophisticated mammals, gorillas,
Dolphins,
donkeys, they're kind of just in the environment that they're in, right? What happens when, if we pollute the water that dolphins live in, right? Then they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment and be like, wow, we're going to build a sophisticated ecosystem that, blocks out the pollution that's being dumped in by humans, right? Like they're smart. They're intelligent animals, but they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment. So manipulating an environment is something that's really unique to humans. I mean, obviously, primates and things like that, they have elements of being able to manipulate their environment, but nothing to the degree of humans. I mean, we've taken island of Manhattan and built skyscrapers on it, right?
which is sinking due to those skyscrapers. So
Is that a thing?
let that be known. That was my current events thought of the day.
Oh, really? What, can you elaborate?
So I saw an article that said that New York is sinking, and I was like, I got to read that. And apparently, due to the weight of the buildings over time, New York City is sinking 1 to 2 millimeters every year. Actually sinking.
Doesn't seem like a lot.
It's not a lot, but in due time,
they could dump like 1 to 2 millimeters of dirt on top of New York City every year.
probably. I don't know
In
if that's
fact,
how
they
it works,
probably do.
but it's sinking and will be Atlantis very soon.
I don't believe that. But
That part I definitely didn't
anyway,
make up. But yes.
Before we discuss manipulating the environments of our brains, what's going on in life? Catch me up. Obviously, it's been a week since we've talked. Let's take a little detour down our personal lives and catch up before we get back on topic. What's new? What are you up to?
Well, like you said, I mean, it feels like summer is just about here. Work is very busy before it gets deathly slow. So it's been hectic at work.
Why is that in your line of work? How does the seasons and
contracts are seasonal?
Okay.
I work in the PR software space. PR people, which I learned in my first year here, seem to take off the summers more, just because their contracts are up. They're taking time off. Like, it's just not the time where big contracts get signed.
Interesting.
So it slows up really quick. We don't have a lot of resources getting put out during that time frame either. It is a very slow season, and it's rough, but it's picking up. We got some stuff going on there, so it's been busy at work. It feels like things are starting to get busy in life, like events coming up, preparing for those, thinking about those, trying to do stuff now that the weather's nice.
Events? What kind of events?
I've got 2 weddings coming up.
Ugh.
One of which is approaching very quick and thrown together very quick. So figuring out what's going on for bachelor parties with that, and then another wedding towards the end of the year, bachelor party for that, all taking place during the summer, towards the end of the summer. So, and just trying to enjoy the time that I do have free outside of work.
I can't stand weddings personally. I thought they were cool when I was like, I don't know, 20. Now that I'm in my 30s, I don't want to go to weddings. I think there should be a socially acceptable rule, that once you've been married for 10 years, there's zero social obligation to attend anyone's wedding. Like, you should be excused from weddings. And that'll, if you want to get married young and hit that 10-year mark earlier, you're excused from weddings earlier.
And listen, like,
because I'm over it.
I am with you. I'm honored to be invited and taking part in the weddings, but man, it is, especially when you're standing up in a wedding. It's more work,
Yeah.
more work than it should be. But like,
My wife and I had a very socially conscious wedding.
Yeah.
We kept it small. We were in, we were out. Tried to make it as little of an inconvenience for everyone as possible.
I mean, that's when that day comes. Like, that's what's happening. We're hitting Vegas. People can join for a party, right? It'll be a good time. I will dress up as Macho Man Randy Savage, and
for your wedding or for the reception.
All of it.
All of it.
All of it. Like that will be what occurs. Again, whoever wants to come can come. It's not going to be a crazy event.
Randy Savage.
But we're going to make it a good time, and it's going to try. It's stress free. More about the enjoyment of the experience than it is, a lot of the work that goes involved. But it's one of those things in life.
So, all right, you got weddings coming up this summer. Anything else going on? You got vacation planned? Or?
Trying to find some time to get away somewhere. We don't know where yet, but what about you?
Like out of the country? Or
no, I hate traveling internationally, but just like maybe take a drive. Like I love driving. So, and we live close enough. Like,
I'm in Chicago, to the Jersey Shore.
Listen, I can try and swing it. I got to get that trip out there. We've been talking about it for too long now.
You guys should drive out to Ocean City.
How far do you think that is? Like 12 hours? I think it's 12 hours to New York City.
It's probably about the same. I highly doubt the time drive is going to be drastically different. Probably about that. I've got cousins that live in Chicago that drive out to Ocean City every couple of years or so.
I'm all about the road trips. Like I'm down for that. Flying's probably easier, but
I mean, if you want a road trip, that's a vacation in and of itself.
Yeah. So we'll see. We're still trying to.
You could rent a van. Maybe I could fly out to Chicago and drive back with you.
Rent a van.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
We could pick up little kids along the way. I can bring a bag of candy.
Yeah, I think kids are conditioned not to get into the vans nowadays. And speaking of that, it was another thing we just watched, and this actually ties into like brain development. Is I started watching this documentary on Peacock. I think it's an older like Oxygen documentary called The Toolbox Killer.
What?
And this guy, essentially, the van thing sparked that in my head too. So this guy and his buddy apparently drove around in a van kidnapping women, and it's sadistic, like torture, terrible, unspeakable acts before killing these women. But he kept blaming, in an interview, he kept blaming his parents and the fact that, like, I think his parents got rid of him early or something happened, and he was like just discarded as a child. He's like, if I would have just had one good parent, I wouldn't have turned out the way that I did. Because this guy was a sociopath.
Interesting.
I forget his name. So we started watching that. And it's brain development, right?
That
so we can touch on that.
Watching.
Yeah, we can touch on that. How's your life going?
Well, I'll segue off of things that we're watching. Last night we started watching the new FX series on the Hillsong Church scandal. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
No, but I'm down for it. I love a good scandal.
So far, it's hard to really tell what the scandal is, other than it's this big, it's a big multinational mega church that, has like multiple branches all over the world. Obviously, they just rake in like tons of cash that's largely tax-free. No one knows what they do with the money other than just like
they spend it. They buy jets.
Mega churches all over the world that are run on volunteer workforce, which is like kind of the gist of the documentary. And then obviously like the biggest church of like all of them, I guess, was the New York City one. And like the main pastor was, I guess, fired suddenly because he was having an affair or something like that, which is like, okay. I mean, I guess I would expect a church to fire their pastor if he's having an affair.
Right. Makes sense.
I still haven't figured out like how does any of this add up to like an FX special?
Well, I mean, I bet it gets good. I bet there's something behind it, but it just reminds
Maybe.
me of
I
a
mean, unless they're like taking all that money and like, I don't know, like starting like a prostitution ring in Sweden or something. Like I'm waiting for like that shoe to drop
yeah.
where it's like, oh, this is why this is an FX special.
Well, this one's not a documentary, but The Righteous Gemstones is about like mega churches. It's a show on HBO. John Goodman and
Interesting.
Danny McBride. It is one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Mega churches.
It's hilarious.
It's such a wild idea. Like as someone who has spent his entire life going to church, goes to church with my family, my wife, my daughter, I do not understand the appeal of ever wanting to go to a mega church. Like I like going to our small community church where you know the people there. Like the biggest scandal would be like, I don't know, it's probably something that's being talked about at like the mom's group, right? Like, who knows?
Timmy was doing cocaine with the kid's football coach or something.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And it's like, what? But obviously for mega churches to exist, like people have to go to them. So like to me, I don't understand the appeal from like the congregant perspective. Like,
we
what
had
makes you want to wake up on a Sunday and go to a mega church?
we had like a super mega church. I don't want to call it a super mega church, but there was one that was not far, and like
mega church.
I would consider it like a mega church. The thing was massive. Like it has like a huge plot of land that's essentially bigger than like a mall. And
Bigger than a
people
mall?
the thing is massive.
Bigger than a mall?
So like the way I can lay it out is
That's crazy.
the way I can lay it out is so they had this massive property with this massive building, and right next to it is it was a campus for AT&T where my mother worked. I've been there, which actually basically was a mall, right? So AT&T has this mall headquarters, and right next to it is this mega church, and like the property is dwarfs the property that AT&T owns, which is just, it blows my mind.
That's crazy.
And that's the type of stuff where somebody who went to, it was a smaller church. It grew and it became like a pretty big sized church when I was growing up. And like, even that, like I didn't like the infrastructure. Like it turned me off from the entire experience. And like, I am not a fan of church systems because of that. Like, I'm just not.
I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. Yeah, I really do. I think that
because it doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, without getting down a
I don't want to go
discussion about this
and
that, but
and I don't want to bash
a fan of the organization of religion.
Yep, and that's exactly what it is.
That is no statement about my beliefs or faith in God
and I don't want to bash anybody's
religion.
Yeah. I don't want to bash anybody's belief. I don't want to bash anybody's church, but like to me, it was not a pleasant experience. And it's just the organization of it is exactly what it was. Not a fan. So and the fact that
I mean,
certain things happen.
As I've been in this season of my life, right, where I've been involved in academics from I guess more from what you could call like leisure academics.
It sounds terrible too.
Not like compulsory academics.
You're doing research and studying because you want to learn more.
Not because I'm actively practicing as a physician right now and need to be writing this paper, writing that paper. Like I'm very much in the space of, and that's prompted me to like branch out into other academic domains rather than just laser focus in on certain neurosurgery things I was doing previously. And that's led me to like speaking to like PhDs that study ancient literature and Old Testament scriptures. And the thing is interesting, a lot of these guys that I've met that are brilliant academics and scholars that they speak Hebrew and Greek and all these languages I can never speak. And they read these ancient texts and write papers and publish papers and books. And a lot of them say like, have outstanding, phenomenal stories of just their, incredible faith in God, but they don't really care for church because and I think that's kind of the category I would put myself in. Obviously, I attend church with my wife and my children, and we support our local community church, because we want to be part of a community. But
I think there's benefits to that,
yeah,
right? Like what you described, like being a part of a community, like it's local, it gets you involved,
it's
it gets the
good for your
kids
brain
involved.
development. I do believe that, right? I mean, humans are social entities, so kind of bringing things back to the
Mhm.
topic of the show. I mean, I do think those things are, spiritual health is good for brain development. I do believe that to some
Yeah.
degree. But what I've learned is, or felt comfortable in, is, I don't need the organization of church to help me understand or to be the bedrock of what I believe. Right? Whereas I think there are many people where like their belief or their social or their spiritual health is their church, right? Like if they don't go to church, they don't have a belief in God. Ooh, okay, thank you. Hold on. Can you get some paper towels? There's literally just.
Oh, geez.
We got a tea delivery live.
You got it thrown at
from
you.
downstairs, and let's just say Julia's depth perception might be a little off.
Julia put it on a slingshot. She shoot it through the door. What happened there?
She threw it, basically, hit the monitor, and tea came flying out of the mug. And then she was just gonna like dine and dash and like take off. And I'm like, "What are you doing? There's tea everywhere."
Working as intended.
Yep.
The tea is now everywhere. It's gonna hit everything.
It was a little spill.
I mean, it was an acceptable spill. A little too big to just leave. But thank you. I appreciate fresh tea. But yeah, I think that the organization of religion and church, while there are community benefits, when that community and when the community of religion supersedes your faith or your belief, and you don't have faith or belief without the community,
I think that's a problem. It creates a big problem.
It becomes a problem, right? Because now you become reliant, and that's probably what these mega churches are honestly, almost prey on, right? Is they prey on these people who become like reliant on the community for their faith.
I have said more than once that organized religion prey on the weak-minded, and like I believe that to an extent. I really do. And
I don't know if weak-minded is the best word for that, but I'll concede it's a fair It's a fair statement to feel that way.
And my personal experience with it, like we could have a whole separate conversation around that. I definitely don't want to get into it tonight, but it's so like I agree. I think it preys on a certain type of something, right? Like it preys on somebody who craves that or needs it. Like I don't want to use the term weak-minded, but I have said that before. And in the circumstance I'm talking about, I still stand by it. But what you mentioned something about that where, being involved in community, like it helps your brain development, helps you keep pushing your brain forward. And you touched on how, before we got into this tangent, as we are so good at, what I do to change my environment, but I want to get like, what other things do you do to help stimulate your brain going forward? Like outside of that, like what other things in your environment or just activity wise can you do to keep your brain moving, churning? So you mentioned engaging socially, whether it's church, community, elsewhere, learning, you're doing like hobby-based research, which sounds crazy to me, but
Well, I mean, it's learning. I think everyone's got a different life path, where they've been and how they've ended up. At the end of the day, I think probably something you and I can relate on is I'm a very distractible individual, right? Like my brain's all over the place. I'm constantly thinking about this, thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
So for me to maintain kind of a path in academics, right? I mean, it's been a long, I've spent over 10 years getting to the position that I'm in academically. You have to be really engaged and interested. And there has to be a natural, innate desire to really learn and be hungry to learn, at least for me. Now, I think there's people who are significantly less distracted. They can just simply say, like, this is the career path I'm on, and like they can force themselves to do a lot of things that they don't want to do to get where they need to go.
Yeah.
Right. There's definitely a personality type that's like, that is not me. Like, if I can't continuously stimulate my interest, I'm going to get distracted and move on to something else.
Yeah. And the way I would, because I agree, I think we're similar, definitely in that sense. Like, I was not a good student at all. And it's because I didn't care about what I was learning. But if I care about something or I'm interested in it, I have a major willingness to learn. I like learning, but I don't if I don't care about it. So, I mean, I was a terrible student because of that.
Why I think I was able to do very well in higher education was because, well, one, I did not go right out of high school, right? I spent 4 years in the military figuring out what my interests were. And so when I went back to school, I went back with a purpose. I basically said, this is what I want to learn and this is what I'm going to learn. I didn't do that like typical undergrad, like, oh, I'm going to take this variety of classes. I'm going to learn a little bit about this, a little bit about that. I did a little bit of stuff like that on my own time, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I would learn about something in organic chemistry and be like, that sounds really cool. Yeah. I would go and like learn about it on my own time, but I wouldn't take that as a reason like, oh, let me go take a class and, this other thing. Right. And also a lot of my interests stemmed out of hard science things. It wasn't like, oh, let me go chase this interest in, the humanities or whatever. Right. So I stayed very laser focused. But I think in that process, I built up a lot of things. Like, I really wanted to learn and understand more. And I really wanted to take all the skills that I was gaining as a professional learner, because I think that's really what it takes to become a physician, right? You have to be a professional learner, period, right? From undergrad to medical school, like, your job is to learn.
And continue to learn as well. Because like medicine and even, I'm sure neurosurgery doesn't just stay the same. I'm sure things happen, things change. There's ways to improve it.
Exactly.
In any physician, I think that's a good call out.
And you can force yourself to learn, but there is an art to learning. And that is, I mean, really at the end of the day, being in higher academics, medicine, PhD realm, doctorate level academics, really it's your job is to learn, and you spend everything your education should be based around learning. The problem is as you learn to learn, then you start thinking, oh, I can apply this to all these other things that I'm interested in. The problem is you don't have time to apply it to all these other things you're interested in, and because you're busy focused on like the thing that you're doing.
Right.
And so this has been a season of life, at least for me, where I've really been able to apply that learning to like all these other things. And that's why I've, made some new friends that are, PhDs in Old Testament theology, and like literally will just like talk to them and kind of pick their brains about like, what do they know? And like, how did you learn this? And kind of like, how do you learn as like a theological person? And so for me, that's how I think your original comment was like, to you thought it was crazy that, I like learn for leisure, but it's just like, you like watching documentaries.
I love documentaries and podcasts. Like, I love listening to people, and
like
it's learning
things. Right? I think people love learning, right? Yeah. I mean, if you can't motivate yourself to learn something, like, you're probably stagnant, and that's not good for your brain. I mean, why documentaries are popular? Why? Because I think it's a low-hanging fruit for people to stimulate their brain.
And don't get me wrong, I still love a good like fiction-based story, but documentaries just scratch a totally different itch, and like I'm engaged when I'm watching those.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's because you're learning something that's
you're nurturing your brain. Right. And you don't feel it's entertaining and it's nurturing your brain.
Yep.
right?
And I'll
Now
take it
think-
even. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go no,
No.
please. I've rambled enough.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say even too, like we've talked about this, like this is how we became friends, right? Is playing video games. And the video games I found that I like the most are the ones that if you have more knowledge than the other people, even if you're not the best player, you can set yourself up for success, and constantly learning different nuances to the game is very fun for me.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that. I think
Mhm.
especially as we continue to age and we're not going to keep up mechanically with these
These
kids
cracked out
with
kids that are
insane
snorting energy drinks.
Yeah. Right? Like I like playing like something that's fast paced, but I do like the idea of like it should be like thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead, but then fast paced in your execution of the present step.
And that's what it's planning and then the followed up execution. And that's the real fun that I have found in tactical based first person shooter games like Valorant and Counter-Strike is listen, I am not good at those games. I'm not, and I used to be terrible. But I can position myself and think 3 steps ahead of these kids and win. Like I have a 90% win rate right now. Like this season it's crazy. It's just cuz I'm smarter. I'm wiser.
You're
let 'em know.
wiser than a
I'm using
12-year-old. Congratulations,
wisdom.
Norty.
Yeah.
You're wiser than a 12-year-old.
And they better know. All
They
right.
better know. You
They
hear
better
that?
know. Yep.
Let's just put the word out to all the kids out there playing video games. You
I'm
heard
smarter
it
than-
here first. Norty's coming for you.
I'm smarter than you.
He's
you
smarter
may
than
you may be physically more capable on a mouse and keyboard, but I will outthink you and outbrain you into the ground.
Outbrain the 12-year-old.
That came from a 34-year-old man to kids. So
I do miss playing some video games, but I've been busy, man, grinding outside, and that's been great for my brain environment. Let me tell you, that was
the next thing I want to get into.
Feels sharper than probably any other point in my life.
And
my motivation to do things like write papers is very low right now. I don't think you could motivate me to write a book right now. But I'm growing the trees to make the paper to one day write that book.
Well, and that was the next thing I want to get on is what in your environment do you find really helps? Because now that the weather's nicer, I feel better. Yeah. We talked about it. Again, all these episodes are blurring together, and I don't know when we talked about like workouts and the effect on the brain, but working out and being active and eating clean like just help me not have a fog and operate on a more level playing field. So we've been getting outside. We've been taking more walks. I'm doing more on my workouts. We mentioned I wake up pretty early and get a workout in. I'm adding layers to that just to be a little bit more active. I feel better. I feel better getting outside. And that's why we want to take trips, get outside, explore.
I mean, humans aren't animals that were meant to be inside. Like there's a lot of things that we do in society, a lot of things in our current environment. Like our brains are not meant for this environment. I don't know how else to explain it, right? Our brains were not meant to rely on ChatGPT to do all the work for us. Our brains were not meant to sit in front of computers all day. Our brains were not meant to have instant access to every bit of information that we've ever needed.
Or even just eat half the garbage that we eat. Like I just feel like I get into like such this like hazy fog when I eat really heavy, like trashy foods. Do I love it? Do I still do it? Yeah. But I'm not going to critically think after I just ate an entire pizza. I'm going to go lay down. And I'm not going to use my brain at all.
I mean, I could critically think after eating an entire pizza.
I can't. I'm going down. I'm going to lay down. I'm going to just veg out. And it feels good to do that every so often, but I feel so much clearer and motivated when I'm eating better and I'm being more active for sure. I'm getting some sunlight. Not that I get much, as you can tell, but
yeah, you're pretty pasty.
Oh yeah, by nature.
Because you spend too much time inside in front of computers playing video games. You got to get outside, plant some trees, man.
That's right. Like I said, we get outside, we walk, but I don't spend.
What are you, 80 years old in a 55+ retirement community?
No, man, we go for long walks. We got a couple.
We
got a couple coffee shops. We got like
grandma gets outside and walks.
We have an arboretum or something. It's not an arboretum. It's like a plant store. So we go get some indoor plants from the plant store. We walk.
Plant store.
We have Rose Hill.
Why buying indoor plants? It's
beautiful
outside.
we don't have anywhere to put them outside, man.
What are you in an apartment?
In
I
an
don't even know where you
apartment.
live.
Yeah, and we live right by Rose Hill Cemetery, which is beautiful. So we go walk the cemetery,
You got
check it out.
infinite land in the cemetery. Just go start planting things around the cemetery.
That's not I don't want ghost plants.
Ghost plants. That's honestly the best part about like obviously my wife and I we lived in a lot of different places between moving with military and school here, school there, job in LA, job in New Jersey. I mean, we've been all over the place. To be where we are now, you know, on like just under like 3/4 of an acre. It's not too much, but it's a nice little chunk of land. Oh, it's so nice just tending to the land that is mine. Right? It's
That
not the
does sound nice.
fanciest. It's not the fanciest. It's not the biggest, not the smallest. You know what? But it's mine. I go out there and water the trees, the plants. That's good for your brain development. Teaching your kids to work outdoors, man. Watching like Alicia today is running around. She was outside a lot today.
How old is she now?
I just say 1.5. I don't know how old she actually is. She'll be 2 in November. So we're kind of
Getting there. Yeah. That's 1.5.
I guess it's 1.5, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking she's like getting closer to 3/4, but I guess not quite. Anyway, 1.5. And you know, we come inside to eat dinner and we're like looking at her feet are just black. And Julia's like, well, I guess that's how we know we're raising her right. I'm like, yeah, you know, it does. It makes me sad to like see these other kids there. It's like, I don't know. I mean, how do you have a life like that when you're, I don't know, stuck, I don't know, living in a New York City apartment, as a kid. I mean, it's a totally different upbringing. I don't know.
I couldn't imagine growing up
crazy as a 30-year-old man living in a New York City apartment. Yeah. Couldn't imagine being a 1.5-year-old kid trying to do that.
I don't know how people raise kids in like a massive city, in a cram city like that, but it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about dogs too, right? Like my dogs literally can 3/4 of an acre is hardly enough for my dogs, and you're like, how do dogs live in New York City apartments?
I see big dogs coming out of small apartments, and I'm just like, that does not seem fair. That's a whole nother conversation. It's like, give them some land to run around on.
I know it's not fair for me, man. I'm a big dog in a small apartment when I'm in New York City.
Yeah.
So yeah, space I think is probably an underappreciated aspect of how it impacts your brain. I don't know. I get agita just seeing like those TikTok videos of like people like showing them how they're decorating their New York City apartment, and it's like this tiny apartment with just stuff everywhere, and they're like pulling stuff out of this, and I'm like, oh my god.
Well, that's like we picked this space because it is a bigger apartment. It's essentially the second floor of like an old building, right? So like there is space to like move around. It's not this cramped little box you're paying an arm and a leg for, right? And I just don't. And I'm somebody who I don't feel like I need a ton of space inside, but I couldn't imagine being confined to just like a room.
It's impossible to find enough space for me. I got a garage and a shed. I can't. I already need to build another shed and put an addition on the house for a bigger garage. I mean, part of the problem is my wife insists on putting her car in the garage. It's like, what a crazy, ludicrous idea. Put your car in the garage. Like,
there's plenty of space outside for that.
Garage is for tools. Driveway is for the cars.
Oh man. What else? What else you do for your brain stimulation?
Well, I think maybe we should do some brainstorming, right? Obviously, I feel like spring, summer, prime time for nurturing, creating a good environment for your brain, great for kids, being outside. How do we carry that over when the weather goes south? That is a great question. Bill's like, use a blue UV light. Like, yeah, that's the same as being outside.
Well, that's where it comes down to like, seasonal depression. And Like,
yeah,
yeah, use a UV light.
I definitely get seasonal affective disorder. I don't know if it's technically reaches disorder status, but I am a different person spring and summer versus winter.
It's definitely real, but I think that's where it's like you can still like I do my workouts inside, rain or shine, right? Like it's at least getting the body moving, getting it flowing.
Your body
I-
flows.
Finding just flows. Finding activities
Wasn't
to
that
do.
song Enya or whatever?
Yeah.
Flows.
Find activities to do. Find something that either gets you moving or gets your brain thinking inside. I think that'll help with a lot
Here
of
we
that.
go. I found it. This is you.
And yeah, we're gonna get DMAC'd right here.
This is what Norty does. Takes too long to pull it up. Oh, I was muted. This is your theme song, Norty, when you
I don't think I've ever heard that song.
You never heard this song?
I don't think so.
Hold on. Let me see if I can find Enya.
Like I remember Enya. I don't remember Enya from that song.
Oh, maybe because you didn't get to the chorus. You never heard this song?
I heard
It
this.
sounds like you've heard it. There's no like that. Hold on. Now we gotta find. There was this great. What was it? From Cougar Town.
You and your
Have you seen
Cougar Town.
Cougar Town?
I have watched Cougar Town. Yeah.
There you go. Let's see. Get demonetized here.
Seriously? Feet off the furniture and pick up all this kettle corn that you spilled.
Kettle corn.
With your hands, not your mouth vacuum. And the
I eat like
easiest
a bag of kettle corn a
drinks
week.
go on coasters.
Quick hypothetical. What if I was to tell you that I'm a man and I can put my drink down wherever the hell I want? Stupid hypothetical. You know what it's like to have no say in your own home?
We both live alone. We can do whatever we want. I can put on my old jeans from high school and rock out to Enya if I want to.
That's really specific.
When my wife was around, the only time I had the place to myself was after she went to bed. And I'd wander around in my underwear and cowboy hat.
I have several cowboy hats.
Yeah, I haven't had to answer to anybody since Sharon died of cancer.
You're so lucky.
So lucky.
I just meant
There's no saving that.
No saving that. I'm in a clock these days.
I'm gonna be in bed as soon as the show.
But yeah, Enya, Sail Away. That's Norty's theme song,
All right.
apparently.
Yep. I do that.
You know
I do
what
just
other-
I put on a pair of old suspenders and I just dance around.
But speaking of shows that I've missed, I started rewatching Arrested Development today. Oh my gosh. It's like one of those shows where like it's good, but until you put it back on, you're like, oh yeah, this is good.
So I'm telling you, Righteous Gemstones. I showed Vanessa that show.
Righteous Gemstones.
It's on
Is it
HBO
a
Max.
show or is it
It's a show.
documentary? Or
It's a show. It's fantastic. I rewatched it and I forgot how good it was.
This is one about mega churches.
Oh yeah.
Wait. Is it how many seasons are there?
2.
Is it like a docu-series or
Nope.
what is it?
Just a comedy.
Just a comedy? Oh, I didn't realize it was a comedy.
It is fantastic.
Oh yeah. Righteous Gemstones. All right,
Yeah.
sounds good.
It's you will enjoy it.
All
If you
right.
don't like it after a single episode, you don't have to watch another one. That's how confident I am.
All right. Sounds good. All right, well, it's 8:00, Norty. You got any additional thoughts before we wrap up? I have to go shock the pool before we go to bed tonight, so I got things to do, my friend.
Find ways to keep your brain stimulated, developing. I don't think it should ever stop. I think continuing to learn, having a willingness to learn in whatever it is good for anybody.
Any advice for anyone that feels stuck, mentally stuck? I mean, I feel like sometimes I get there, my gears, like they're just spinning, like the tires are spinning in the mud. How do you unstuck yourself?
outside perspective always helps.
Hmm.
If you feel comfortable, depending on what it is.
True.
Or
Probably
just
something I take for granted. I have
or
like
just-
built-in outside perspective
Yeah.
with my wife, and being married is not something specific to my wife, but I think when you're married, you have that built in, and you kind of take that for granted for someone who maybe doesn't have that person that they live with.
Or if it's something where you just don't want to get outside perspective, focus on something else for a bit. That's always helps me. I'm like, if I'm stuck in a rut or something's just not firing, I'm like, I need to take a step away, and I always come back looking at it from a fresh lens, feeling better. Stop queuing into the same game. Take a step away from it, decompress, hit it the next day, a week from now, whatever it may be, and you come back feeling better, thinking about things more clearly, and I think that'll unstick you. That's my advice. Works for me.
I think it's good advice. And on that note, we're gonna wind down, but we will see you all same time next week, 7 p.m. for Rad and Norty show. We're gonna be starting to switch gears a little bit. We're going to get more into some sports-related topics. So next week will be the first of a handful of sports-related topics. We're going to be talking about the idea of performance anxiety, or what's kind of, in layman's terms, referred to as the yips. Rather, it affects often pitchers, kickers in football. So we'll be breaking that down next week. We hope you'll join us. Questions, comments, bring them to the table, leave them in the chat. Always like to see them. But we hope we will see you next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. And without further ado, I guess that's all we got. We will see you next week. Rad and Norty, we're out.